must have been hard. It must have been hard at the start. How did you do that?
Well, first of all, the script you gave me, Cam Moore's the greatest real estate agent in Australia. Paid 4% last year.
Yeah, that's what I think.
Is that what you want me to say? Thank you.
Yeah, a bit loud.
Firstly, thanks for having me, everyone. That's a very kind introduction. Thank you, Campbell. That's exactly what I wanted you to say. But look, I think GFC really interesting because anyone that sort of lived on the Gold Coast a longer period of time would have been through pretty much what we're going through now, which is just unbelievable. The good times are going to continue to roll. Certainly in property, there's this notion that it's just going to continue to grow and grow and grow. And everyone who went through the GFC knows that the handbrake came on that very quickly. And we were on the other side of that. So what you remember is you had this party, real estate, making money, events, training, 2-ply toilet paper, Makona coffee, great training, bang, all of a sudden, GFC comes, handbrake comes on, all that stuff, cancelled training, cancelled birthdays, we're not doing any of that. We came in after that. So we came in at a time where our competitors were actually quite negative, fair to say.
No, really negative.
And pulling back on events, pulling back on their staff. So looking back, it was actually a real advantage starting at that time because we came in and our slogan at the time we thought was positively different. So we wanted to be positive because there's so much doom and gloom in the industry. So when we came in and started treating our team like clients, and that's a point that I want to talk about. The real estate industry had typically been here's our brand, I'm the principal, it's a hierarchy of, it's a privilege for you to work for me. That was kind of the vibe of a lot of agencies around Australia that were doing really well. And I never believed that. I always thought that if you could have great agents working with you, they can pick up their business tomorrow and go to another business, just as Campbell could any time. And he's going to take his clients, his following, and it doesn't really matter that much what brand he works under. In fact, it doesn't matter at all. It's Campbell is the brand. So our job is to actually, rather than sort of say, oh well, here's our brand, we're amazing, work for us, and sort of create this environment where the agent feels like they have to stay because if they leave, they'll fail. We kind of reversed that and said, no, stay with us, make it a hotel for agents to want to stay. So if you look at it that way, we kind of look at it as a metaphoric hotel that you come into work every day. We want you to have a great energy. We want to say yes to as much work as you request. We want to treat you well with events, training, birthdays, all of those kinds of things. A good example of that is a couple of years into starting, we actually did an event. So we're big on doing things for our team to make our team feel special. Because if your team feels special, they're going to attract other great people. And what's really interesting is the byproduct of that, particularly with social media, is when you're doing that stuff, you're not even engineering it, but it's actually getting out to other team members. And a great story is, not long into our business, we actually did a ladies' night where we went to a restaurant over at Broadbeach Waters. Every woman in the company was invited, from administrators, to property managers, to salespeople. And sort of halfway during the night, they thought this is lovely cocktail night. We actually got a shoe menu done, which from Style Trend, that website. We picked the ones that were on special, and we actually had a menu that came out during the night. With the waiters pick up the silver thing, and then they read it, and they could actually order a pair of shoes on us, whatever they were, heaps of different kinds of shoes. And that was, we videotaped that event. That went viral.
And the girls loved it.
Oh, absolutely loved it. And then we still have people to this day actually say, oh, you guys are the ones that gave all the women the shoes. We haven't done it since because it would be a little bit, you can't do it twice. But those kind of events we've done along the way to kind of show our team that, hey, we appreciate you, but the byproduct of that is it actually then starts to become what you're known for. And it's an attitude that you can't just do it to get social media coverage, you've actually got to mean it. And it sort of permeates down through the business. So going back to the question of starting GFC, that was actually a positive. And part of me secretly hopes, not that I want to see property prices come down, but part of me as a business person is not going to mind a bit of a market shift in our industry because from a growth perspective, I mean, I look at it right now, all we have right now is a good buggy in the water at the right time. If seas get stormy again, that's just an opportunity for us to, build another boat. So when the next cycle comes, we're ready. And I reckon I've got a couple of cycles left in me and Kevin.
Yeah, I reckon
You've probably got one.
I've got one. Everyone says that.
Yeah.
But what Dane is saying is very real from every salesperson and administrators and property managers in there, is sharing the love and sharing the gifts in a very genuine way. And a good example really a few years ago, as in shouting myself and my son to go to the AFL football grand final, accommodation, flights, and everything else. That, to me, that means so much. But he and Kim do the same for every particular person within the office in a very personal way. And it's probably giving, and then you get back because everyone's happy. Because now it's become an attraction business in regard to people wanting to work in real estate.
Absolutely. And look, the thing about that is, some people might be saying, oh, what if you do all that stuff, what if they leave? And that can happen, and you do get hurt. Hey, Katie, what are you doing? Are you part of the group? Don't refer to her, refer to him. See ya, Katie.
She does a lot of business too.
Yeah, she's right. What was I saying? It's really good.
It was exceptional.
It was about, what if that, so you invest all this in them, and what if they leave, right? And the thing is, you've got to accept that you're going to get hurt. And someone says, oh, don't get too close as a leader. And I actually don't believe that, because I don't think you can actually be a proper leader unless you are close. Like, how can you be a leader and not be close, But you've just got to accept that you're going to get hurt, and that's part of it, because you're going to get surprised, and you're going to get emotional return in a positive way, but you're also going to get it, in a negative way. But the other thing is, you've got to take total ownership over that too. If someone leaves, in our industry, it's sort of famous for, oh, they were never good anyway, and then the daggers come out, and then they're on their listings in their database, and we try and go the other way. We've probably got the highest retention of anyone.
I would have thought so.
But when we do lose someone, we actually say, well, that's our fault. What could have we have done better? And if you have that, it sort of takes away any power you're giving to any external force, because you're owning it. And then you can sort of look at that and go, well, what can I change? And there are always lessons in it. Always lessons in it. And sometimes it's just that person's just a massive pain in the ass, and you've stopped doing that dance with them that you don't want to do anymore. And that's okay. But as long as you own that and you accept it and move on.
Does an office have to be large to be successful? Yours has gone from zero to hero in a 10-year period, which is massive growth. Is it important to go large, as you said? For many businesses.
I think it depends on what you personally want in your business.
Yeah.
So a good example, like in our industry, there's non-selling principles and selling principles. So a selling principle lists and sells their own properties. So they've got 20 vendors that they've got to look after. If I had 20 vendors that I had to look after, there's no way that I could run a business our size. Effectively anyway, or well. But it doesn't mean it's wrong, because if that leader really wants to do that, you can make both models work. But it actually depends on knowing what you want. There's no point going out and putting 30 people on your business if you can't stand people management. If you're not, unless you actually have someone in place to help you with that or to fulfill that role. Because your growth is never going to exceed your capacity to manage people, problems, issues. But I look at that as good problems. So if you actually look back at growth, you've got 4 people in the office, and then Campbell comes in, right? 5 people. So then all of a sudden you've got these 4 people that have been together for 3 months. Campbell comes in. Oh, Campbell's here. He's got his own energy, as you can imagine, bring into the office, and that lifts. Then 5 goes to 10, and then the 10 become, a band of brothers. Because at the beginning it was mostly men, right? And not because it was, it just happened that way. Yeah. And it's funny because people used to say when we had 10 men, oh, it's a boys club. Not by any design. It's just that they were the only people that would join.
Yeah, it's probably the other way around.
It's 60% women.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. And so So,
we
and I put you in that category.
Yeah, let's be fair.
It grows and changes, but what happens is along the way, that 20 agents, 30 agents, the dynamic changes, but it creates a whole set of problems, and it creates a whole set of I don't letterbox. One of my pains in the arse when we first started was I used to get 5 people a week come and say, I got a letterbox, I got a bloody letterbox drop from that person in this mailbox, and it was this kind of like, well, I said, well, do you ring the guy who owns Ray White and complain about who's dropping letterbox drops and that, as if the agents are so protective of listings they don't have yet. They're so protective of letterboxes. But for them, it's so important and it's so intense that we just have to make a rule. Don't even come to me now. I don't want to talk about letterboxes. So now, every now and then, I get someone who'll want to talk about it, and you have to treat it with respect. But it's interesting how, in that phase of the business, it was a huge issue. And now that you kind of work out that, hey, you get what you get, they'll get what they get. No one's here to do the wrong thing. Go out there and build your business, and everyone can do that as a team, and then you build that culture and it goes from there. But you've got to go through that initial pain of, okay, here are the rules to actually get to that point. But there are good problems. You can't have growth without problems. And if you don't embrace that, like growth's messy, it's not linear. It's there's pains in the arse, there's people leave, there's tech issues. I love that saying. Take the SH, that's one of the best I've heard.
It is.
That all of that stuff changes, and then all of a sudden you find your servers out of date. I don't know whether people use servers anymore, they use clouds. Yeah, well, there you go, they're coming back. So yeah, interesting. So anyway, next question, Kevin.
Yeah, because in your, because sometimes as a leader you're a little bit on your own, etc., etc. And I know you know a lot of real estate agents outside because you're doing so many different companies starting that with probably. Did they become more mentors? Have you got certain mentors that even today are the same as they were 5, 10, 15 years ago? Or not really?
Yeah, I do. No, one of my greatest mentors was a guy called Don Marion, who passed away some years ago. And he was a guy that, and you know what interesting about a mentor? Like the best mentors are the ones that actually believe in you. So if you're looking for a mentor, it's good to have someone who's at a distance, that's built a great business or done what you want to do, might be in a sport or whatever, you can catch up with them. But the best ones are the ones that actually genuinely believe in you. Because when they genuinely believe in you, it changes the game because they're invested, And the other thing is they're not afraid to actually tell you when you're off track. Don's favourite saying to me is, if I started to get a bit too big for my own boots in my 20s or 30s, he'd say, Dane, I think you think you've arrived. And it took me a while. What do you mean by that, Don? I think you're here. I think you think you've already actually arrived at the destination in life. You better actually just have a bit of a look at yourself. And I go, okay, fair enough. I get all shitty with him, and then I realise he's right, But I'd be doing an auction, and then, I used to have nightmares because he'd come to an auction, he'd have a Spyrex notepad in his top pocket, and he'd pull it out in the middle of an auction and write things down, and I knew what he was doing. So I'd be on an absolute roll thinking I'm doing a great job, and then he'd pull out this notepad. I'm like, what did I say? But it was good because I actually missed having someone doing that. Campbell doesn't do me now. But yeah, I mean, he was a great mentor. But what he did is he taught me about, he basically programmed me. I actually look back, and actually he was a guy that programmed the way I think. And he was a big influence on my attitude towards running a real estate business because he actually understood that he was a real estate guy, but he understood that the agent was the client. So for us, the philosophy, our primary philosophy is the client on the other end is someone who interacts with the salesperson. My interaction during the day is not clients most of the time. It's actually the salesperson. So if I'm looking after the salesperson and attracting and keeping and growing and supporting, then that person's going to look after the client. A lot of people see it the other way around, where even some franchise groups see it the other way around, where they think, oh, well, we're going to look after the client. Well, no, who is your client? A franchise's client is the business owner. But a lot of them don't see it that way. They think, in the end, and my question then is, well, how much interaction do you actually have with the end user? And their answer is often zero. So if you have zero interaction with that end user, how can they possibly, and they don't pay you a wage, how can they actually be your client? And if you have that attitude, then all of a sudden I'm walking into my business every day. How can I look after my clients, meaning salespeople, not how do I look after clients that I have no
Yeah, and you've said that from day one,
Yeah.
and it's been really pleasant because I've done 25 years, and Dane's always said, you are my client, speaking to salespeople or property management. And that's never been said before because it's never looked, it's never looked that way. They're working for you rather than the other way around, but they're clients and you nurture those and get on well with those people, all of those people.
Yeah.
And on the other side of the coin too, I think probably looking from my side of the fence, etc., is as far as problems as business owners get, everyone's going to get a truckload of those. However, you don't take them on board and make that the big part of your life, which it can be very, very easily. As I see from the outside, I think a lot of people do as business owners become problem solvers when you dismiss it as a problem, it gets sorted out anyway.
Yeah.
A bit like kids, I suppose.
Absolutely.
Is that a fair call?
Oh yeah, but I think a part of that too is, I think one of the fears I had, so sometimes with growth, like when you've got say 10 people or 5 people, which for a real estate business is small, right? I had to, and I love the fact that we want to keep a personal connection with our team, I love that. But I remember having this fear that if we grow, we're going to lose that personal connection. And then I went to a conference in Wellington, and I sat at a table of a company that had 250 agents. And I saw the principal like work the tables, he knew every person. And I started to ask the team, I said, you know, how often do you see Marty? His name is Marty Cooper in Norfolk. And we love Marty, he's awesome. But you know, we also have this person, that person. And I realised that was actually my sort of limiting belief of what I thought was going to happen.
Yeah.
Mostly because of what I observed here with bigger businesses. But it didn't have to be our reality. So I actually came back from that and thought, you know what, we can actually grow a bigger business. It's not going to be exactly the same as 10. But you can still have it. So as soon as I actually let go of that, then I started out there going to try and attract as many good people. But anyway, you've got to pass the dinner party test. You know, I do believe that with employing someone, because if you're going to be spending a lot of time with them, you really don't want to throw someone in there for the sake of it. And we have done that accidentally a few times, haven't we?
Yeah,
you know,
that's any business.
And but I think what we are very good at is keeping people out of our business. You know, like we get calls all the time from people that obviously real estate does attract some characters, and it's actually the people you keep out of your business can often actually be better in your business. Yeah, and you don't notice it because if they were there, you know, it's like throwing a hand grenade in. Like someone goes, oh, why don't you put such and such on? That they write, you know, heaps of income. And I say, yeah, but I've got something to protect. You know, you roll the hand grenade in and go, let's see how it goes. It's probably going to go off, and then the 3 people around that are going to get injured, and you're going to be, you know, you just to chase revenue when you actually end up the other side probably losing revenue.
And it is an attraction business now. But probably every person now can probably speak on behalf of people, property managers, office administrators. It's a real one big happy family, even though it's growing very, very large. So that's probably a positive attitude permeates right throughout the system. But just a little bit about real estate as well too. That's in regard to the business. Feel free to ask Dane any questions. We'll have a bit of time for that in a little minute as well too. We stop at lunchtime. The real estate market here, the economists seem to agree. Can't seem to agree what's happening in the property market at the moment. Some feel it will drop mid this year. Some think we'll have some time before we see a drop. That might be down the track. What do you think? What's your prediction, if you can predict?
Okay, so this is really funny. What was it? Was it 2020 March, April? That was COVID, right?
Yeah.
So March, April 2020, I was on the Zoom meeting with all our team saying, sell everything, right? And I'm glad no one recorded that. Like, sell everything. And then 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, JobKeeper, just calm down. You know? Just calm down. And then 3 months later, the best market in the Gold Coast is good. So that's what we've been through, right? So for anyone to actually sit in front of you and make predictions about what they think's going to happen is kidding himself. But I will say, I can comment on what I see now. What I see now is we've had the best real estate market that I've ever seen, but not just on the Gold Coast, anywhere in Australia. I always laugh when people say, oh, that's a hot market, that's a hot pocket. But you could have bought anything at full list price 2 years ago in any suburb on the Gold Coast, and it's gone up a minute by 30%. Like, generally speaking, right? It wouldn't matter. You could have paid full list price. Isn't it amazing looking back how we haggled over, 5 or 10 or 50,000, and you look back now and it's gone up 3 or 4 or $1 million, or and you think, geez, we should have bought them all.
Yeah, totally.
But no one knew that, and I think that's the thing, is that you look back on it and you go, well, how could we have predicted that? So how can we actually then go and predict the future? But what's interesting is that what I'm seeing right now is I'm seeing a little bit more balanced return. So end of last year, FOMO, I better buy now. Southern interest was massive. We were selling. If you had told me 2 years ago that we'd be selling 5, 6 million, 4 million, $3 million properties on FaceTime, sight unseen, to Southerners, I wouldn't have believed it. But that has become a very normal thing. Campbell's done plenty of those deals himself, where he's FaceTime buyers, they haven't even seen it.
Well, that happened on Saturday. Yeah, Saturday, and the previous one that you did, Ron, the murder court in Palm Beach.
So that's happened, so there was a definite FOMO. There was a definite, I better buy now, because if I don't buy now, it's going to be worth more. What I've started to see early in January now, and sort of into February, is there's more balance. So buyers aren't as high end is strong because they seem to be less spooked. They've got plenty of cash, they're buying it, they're going in hard. But anything sort of mid to lower level, that's actually, it's still fantastic. It's still the best I've ever seen, but it's starting to show signs of balance. Clearance rates have probably started to drop a little bit, but they're not. What we've got to remember is that they're not normal now. They're completely unusual right now. So early signs of balance is restoring. So if you're wanting to buy, I wouldn't be in a massive rush today, is what I'm saying. Don't tell anyone outside of this room that I said that. But between you and me, I think you're going to find, and elections typically, if you look at realestate.com, who they're an ASX 200 company, they forecast revenue growth, and their revenue growth is based on listing volume. So they know that elections always slow votes. And you've seen that. For centuries now, yeah. Gough Whitlam,
Harold Bolt, And I know you answered this question anyway. Would you auction or private treaty your property in the current market?
Well, I tell you what's fascinating. In a slow market, no, I'm not auctioning because it'll pass in a normal market. Oh, no, I'm not auctioning because I don't need to. In this market, some people say, oh, I'm not auctioning because there's too many buyers anyway. I'm like, well, this is the exact time to do it. The clearance rate is in the 90s for Queensland.
Yeah.
That has never happened in the history of the Queensland. It's never happened in Queensland real estate. 50 to 60% was the clearance rate in the height of pre-GFC market. 50 to 60%. It's now 90s. So the thing about it is, why sell it to the first buyer that comes through? If you've got a property, more buyers with an emotional connection that are put in competition equals a premium. I'll go as far as to say, you're probably never going to get a chance to sell in a market like this again in your life. So if you don't auction it, I think you're actually costing yourself money.
And it's well above the odds once they're big enough sand coming through. You can always sell it before.
That's right.
A bit like that one in Myrtle Court, it's above the odds. So at least you've got a big enough sand. So you don't have to go to auction with it.
And you know what you hear a lot though? Because people say, oh, I don't want to be greedy, I'll just put my price on it. And I said, that's fine. But the thing is, if someone buys something for $900,000, you could have got 1.1 for it. All you're doing is giving that person $200,000. And but I'm happy. Well, you're happy because you actually are living in, what do they call that word? It's not delusion, but you're actually living in ignorant bliss. If you didn't even know, you could have got the $200,000. So you'll never actually know.
And happened with Leaf, you know Leaf?
Yes.
Yeah, he said that one of his neighbours did that. They sold theirs for 900 off the market, etc. And they were stoked because they thought it was worth 800. Won 2 doors up, went up for auction 2 weeks later and sold for 1.15. And the owner, who was really happy at 900, it would have been really, really dark when they found that.
Yeah.
But just over here in a minute, Brian. I'll put it over to you now. Any questions you want to ask Dane in the business world or real estate, etc. Feel free to do it. And your first cab off the rank.
I really enjoyed the talk.
Thanks, mate.
You work in an extremely competitive business here on the coast. Do you have a strategy for...
Sorry, Neil, can you hear that? A bit louder, Brian. A bit louder so people up the back can hear.
I was just asking the question, like, all the real estate agents on the coast work in a very, very competitive business. You know, like we're getting phone calls every day from people basically wanting to sell our house. How do you stay ahead of the game? What are the strategies? And it applies to any business, not just in a competitive market. Is it something you don't?
It's a good question.
Yeah.
So the thing is, and quite often, if one of our teams in a bit of a rut, and they've lost a few listings, you know, to competitors, they'll often come with that question, and they'll often come with that question, and what they're looking for is they're looking for some kind of marketing edge or some kind of script, and I say forget that, right? The reason why most people get business is because they're there, and I know that sounds like a funny competitive advantage, but the biggest competitive advantage is actually being there, like doing what you're doing right now. Like, I don't think anyone in this room is going to be looking at your logo and your, you know, and all that marketing. They're going to be looking at you going, nice person, I've met him, offers a good service, I trust him, you've asked for the business and I'll refer. So we try and focus on relationships, you know, so if you think about real estate, I always say to our team, we're actually the only business in the world that knows where our clients live. Or we actually know where our future clients live, which explains why you get harassed, right? So, and I love flying over the suburbs and looking down at roofs, just going, wow, look at that marketplace, look at that, you know, 2.5% monitoring.
Yeah.
But I love looking at that and just going, isn't it amazing how behind all those houses is either an investor, a tenant, an owner, and if you look at an agent, all their job is to build relationships with those people and become their agent before they need one. And that's by far the biggest competitive advantage. But no one wants to hear that when they're flat. You know, they want a short term, give me a marketing strategy, give me something. But the answer is actually playing more of a longer game in that situation. And there's definitely, in saying what I just said, what's really interesting is sometimes all someone needs is, okay, well, you know, this month we're going to upgrade the ads. Or this month we're going to, your auctioneer's free or whatever. It's amazing how when someone gets given that, all of a sudden they feel they've got a purpose to make the call. And you think to yourself, well, why do they actually need that in the first place? Because they should have just been doing that anyway, you know? So, but it is interesting because in real estate, you got to remember, realestate.com, domain, social media, open homes, auctioneers, we've actually got all access to the same. We've got access to the same portals. We use all the same marketing. So what it ultimately comes back down to is the relationship that person has, the skill set that person has, and how comfortable that client is working with that person to represent them. Because the branding scheme is all the same. What isn't the same is that guy right there.
Over to Shem.
Hi, Dane.
Can I just say I've actually been referred to you?
Everyone does.
Yeah. So before I even came here, I had a friend say you've got to use Shem.
Actually, I think everyone in the group here would say exactly the same thing in regard to Shem, and also a lot of other people within this group. No, seriously, bottom of my heart,
Yeah.
that's very, very true. Okay, and a lot of people in the same group exactly the same.
That's
Same
my
ilk, different.
question here.
Oh, yeah.
Dane, you mentioned earlier how leadership builds from the top. And obviously, as a leader, you have performed an exceptional job for your team. My question is that no doubt you've got lots of experience challenges, and I'd like to ask if you could sum, in a sentence or maybe in a word, how did you overcome those challenges? In other words, you come from an empty cup. What are some of the maybe self-care tips that you've provided for yourself to be able to give so much?
Did you say self-care? Okay, so that's a great question because no one talks about this stuff. Right? But the thing about leadership, I mean, 90 salespeople, right? The cup analogy is a great one. So you come to, what's really interesting is you come back in January, your cup's full, right? It's so full. And I came back January, cup was full. My first week at work, amazing impact. Got COVID, right?
You did?
Yeah, I got COVID, and it knocked me around a bit. And so I'm only just filling it back up now. But the thing is, you've got to have something outside of real estate or outside of your business that charges your battery, you know. Because otherwise, to me, you end up being like one of those toys that's sort of half working. You know, it's not actually working properly. So it might be surfing, it might be going on a jet ski, it might be getting into nature. I find that really helps. You know, whether that's a walk or whatever. Getting off social media is a massive thing. That was a big thing for me.
And that's the one-word answer for you, Chef.
Oh, sorry.
No, I was only saying
I think the answer to it is invest in yourself and look after yourself. You know, because people think that's selfish, but if you're not the best you, they're not getting the best you. They're getting the filter.
You guys are exactly the same page.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we need to do some stuff.
No, you really do.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Did you have a question or not,
No,
Dave?
I didn't have a question, but I just want to thank you for coming along today, Dane. But also, if any of you are thinking of selling, I've sold 2 properties through Parkpots now. Dane ran one of my auctions. As you know, I listen to them always. You need a really experienced team, especially if you get a tricky buyer, which is what I just had on my most recent sale. There's no point in using a fly-by-night agent that doesn't know what they're doing. You cannot buy experience, and it's really important to use an agent that really knows what they're doing when you're selling a property to get the best result. And, yeah.
Yeah, I'm the man.
Also, you are the man, but I'll second that with a good lawyer too, because like when you've got a tricky buyer, a good lawyer really comes
Yes,
into
agree.
play.
Totally agree.
And AJ?
I've got a couple of questions. One was a question, thank you, Jack. Appreciate that. One of the things you said about the staff, when they move on, would you then take them back on after they've gone on the other to your competitors? Would you then take them back on?
Depending on the circumstances, but I would have no problem doing that if they're left respectfully. And fine, no problem. I've done it, but there's times where I wouldn't do that, only based on the fact that, you know, I'm glad they left. but there's not very many that I wouldn't take back. But there's only, we can count on sort of one hand in 11 years how many we've actually lost. Touch wood, I'll probably get back in the week. You know, 5 minutes on my desk. You know how Murphy's Law works.
Not let us just a text.
Yeah.
What is your long-term plan with Harcourt? Where do you think you're going to go to the next stage?
It's always a great question, AJ, but I've never won. It's really interesting. I've never really been one to do that. You know, like I love growing, and I love, you know. In fact, I get restless if we're not growing, and so that's really comes down to people, and having more people join our team over a period of time, but not in a breakneck kind of, you know. So I'm a bit reluctant right now to go out there and do that at normal volume, because that's what I'm really conscious of, is that our volume of sales, right, is not usual, it's unusual.
Yeah, because between 150 and 200 sales.
Oh yeah.
That's a lot of sales for three offices.
So I don't want to base my growth decisions on the current turnover.
Yeah.
You know, I actually find when markets change, growth is easier. Because people are making money and doing well, they don't leave companies. But when things change and, you know, principals get negative, and see what will happen in the next cycle is there'll be a lot of principals that have made a lot of money that will then have to decide, do I want to go around again for another 5 years and, you know, do this again? Because it'll be challenging, there'll be tough conversations that need to happen. And that's when I'll start to that's when I'll get a bit of a pep in my step, because I'll go, okay, cool. I'm at the cycle of my business where I'm gonna grow again. But I'll know when the time is, but I've never been one to have like 5-year plans, because I just think, do what you do right now. Have some vision. I can always do that with, you know, obviously we want a big business and we want agents, but have the next quarter's goal set. Because it's so overwhelming sometimes to go, well, I want to be here. When you're here, what's the next step? The next step's that.
Okay, so any other questions you can ask Dane in a minute. Just a reminder that next week we've got an AFL. What's his title again?
He's the business development manager for AFL, so his role is to get people excited about the AFL season, have a bit of fun with the season. So
And that's a big business in AFL as a business, and the growth in Queensland and the growth in the Gold Coast. So next week, if you've got any colours you want to wear, as the Suns or the Demons or whatever, just bring them along next week. He'll speak for about 20 minutes next week, but just keep that in mind, and then we'll go back to the normal routine that we do of promoting our own individual businesses, because that's important. But that is a big, big business in the Gold Coast, the AFL, and in Australia, etc. So over to you now then, Clinton.
Today, on behalf of the group, thank you for coming along today, spending your time with us and sharing your wisdom. And I think for all of us, there's a lot of wisdom in respect to that. I myself personally can attest to what you've built. My wife, Zoe, worked with Campbell for a number of years. I saw the way you mentor everybody. Are in touch, as you said, and the culture that you have with your business is obvious and it's infectious. And it's a privilege to have somebody as good as you with us today.
Thank you.
And it's a small token of our
And
appreciation.
his dad used to be a real estate agent. Oh, there you go. There you go.
And you made the family name mean something now.
Something.
You know, yeah.
Yeah. Here we are, Dane. That's the kid. If you've got any questions of Dane after we finish the meeting, I don't.